As most of you may know, many serial killers go unnoticed in society for years before they're caught. In rare cases, however, there are exceptions to that rule. One such point is that of cannibalistic serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Since his arrest in 1991, details about how exactly he was caught have been shrouded in mystery, and rumors have abounded on message boards and media outlets alike. While Dahmer's story has been told in books and movies, most people don't realize how close he came to remaining accessible and how authorities were able to catch him. Today, you are about to witness the disturbing tales of the American serial killer and sex offender. If you've heard of Jeffrey Dahmer's heinous atrocities, you may wonder how police apprehended him after killing and dismembering over a dozen people. Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal and the Milwaukee Monster, was an American serial murderer and sex offender who murdered and dismembered teenagers in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin region. After authorities discovered that many of his killings contained necrophilia, cannibalism, and the preservation of his victims' body parts, mainly their skeletons, Dahmer gained the moniker Milwaukee Cannibal. Dahmer, who suffered from borderline and schizotypal personality disorders, was convicted of 15 of the 16 murders he committed in Wisconsin and sentenced to 15 life sentences of life imprisonment in February 1992. In 1978, Dahmer received his 16th term of disownment for another murder he committed in Ohio. Dahmer was beaten to death on November 28, 1994 by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institute in Portage, Wisconsin. However, Dahmer's death has inspired various TV episodes, movies, and documentaries, including Netflix's 2022 drama series, Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story, starring American Horror Story Asylum's Evan Peters. In a Netflix interview in September 2022, Peters stated why playing a serial murderer was the most challenging part he'd ever done. Peters stated that he was afraid of what Dahmer did, and he also felt very terrified while committing to acting the character. He also claimed that it was one of the most difficult things he ever had to accomplish, and this was all because he wanted to be sincere. As a result, he made up his mind to go to scary areas and remain there for a long period of time. He topped it all off when he said that the crew was instructing him on the guardrails, and he feels he owes them a lot since he couldn't have accomplished all the duty without them. It was a challenge to this individual who appeared to be so typical, yet behind it all, had this real-world periodicity hidden from everyone. And it was incredible that it all transpired. To convey the narrative as realistically as possible, it was vital to respect the VIC, time, and the victims' families. Conversations with the Killer, The Jeffrey Dahmer Tapes, a 2022-part docuseries produced by Typical, is also about Dahmer. So, how did Jeffrey Dahmer get caught? Obviously, we all know that he was eventually apprehended by the Milwaukee police, but how was he able to pull up the stunts that kept him in the dark for so long? And who do you think is behind his apprehension? You have to stay tuned to find out. On July 22, 1991, Dahmer was arrested after offering three men $100 at a pub to accompany him back to his apartment to pose for naked pictures. Tracy Edwards, one of the three males, accepted the offer. When Edwards entered Dahmer's flat, he observed a terrible stench and many boxes of hydrochloric acid on the floor, which Dahmer said he used to clean bricks. Dahmer requested Edwards to tilt his head and gaze at his tropical fish during the captured duration, when Dahmer inserted a handcuff on his wrist. He attempted but failed to cuff both of his wrists. Though Edwards was perplexed, he had to question Dahmer about exactly what was going on. He followed him into Dahmer's bedroom to pose for naked photos. While in the bedroom, Edward noticed nude men posters on the wall, a VHS of The Exorcist 3 playing, and a blue 57-gallon barrel in the corner of the room, emitting the awful stench he had noticed previously. Dahmer pulled out a knife and demanded that Edwards removes his clothes. To appease him, Edwards began unbuttoning his shirt, but informed Dahmer that if Dahmer removed his shackles and put away his knife, he could do it himself. Dahmer ignored Edwards' request and placed his head on his chest to listen to his heartbeat. He then informed Edwards that he wished to consume his heart. To keep Dahmer quiet, Edwards, who intended to leap out of a window or flee through the unlocked front door, asked Dahmer if they could go back to the living room, which had air conditioning, and sip a beer. Dahmer agreed, and the two returned to the living room. Edwards then requested Dahmer to use the restroom. After 5 hours at Dahmer's apartment, Edwards hit Dahmer in the face as he sprang up from the couch and fled via the front door. That night, at about 11:30 p.m., Edwards flagged down two Milwaukee police officers, Robert Routh and Rolf Mueller, at the intersection of North 25th Street. Edwards told the cops, who noted he was wearing a handcuff around his wrist, that a freak had abducted him. When the cops' handcuff keys failed to release Dahmer from his handcuff, Edwards volunteered to accompany the officers back to Dahmer's apartments. When the cops arrived at Dahmer's apartment 213, Dahmer admitted to placing the handcuffs on Edwards, which is when Edwards said that Dahmer also threatened him with a knife and intended to eat his heart. Dahmer, who remained silent despite Edwards' allegation, pointed the cops to a key on his bedroom dresser. Mueller, one of the cops there, discovered a knife beneath Dahmer's bed, as well as an open dresser with Polaroid photographs of mutilated human remains. At this point, Dahmer told Mueller that all that he saw was actually real. He went further to show the photos to his companion Routh, who was in the living room at that time. Dahmer requested the cops to avoid arrest when he noticed Mueller holding the images when the officers overwhelmed him and handcuffed him. Mueller examined Dahmer's refrigerator after he was apprehended and discovered a decapitated skull on the bottom shelf. After all that had transpired, Dahmer told Mueller that he should be killed for all he had done. Now you may be wondering, is Dahmer really aware of his bad deeds? I mean, he's been more of a psychopath, and it's very surprising for him to make such a call. What do you think is wrong with this guy? The Milwaukee Police Department's Criminal Investigation Bureau performed a search. They discovered 4 additional violent photographs of Dahmer in his kitchen, 7 skulls, some painted or bleached, in his bedroom and closet, and a tray of blood drippings in his refrigerator. 2 human hearts and a portion of an arm were discovered in plastic bags on the refrigerator shelves, as well as a torso and a bag of human organs and tissue frozen in ice at the bottom of Dahmer's freezer. In the 57-gallon barrel, investigators also uncovered 2 skeletons, a pair of severed hands, 2 severed penises, a mummified scalp, and 3 more torsos dissolved in acid. A total of 74 Polaroid images depicting the dismemberment of each of Dahmer's victims were discovered. As a matter of fact, the chief medical examiner stated that it was more like deconstructing someone's collection. Dahmer, who forfeited his right to have a counsel present during his interrogations, was questioned for 60 hours over 2 weeks by Detective Kennedy and Detective Dennis Murphy about evidence obtained in his residence. Surprisingly, he agreed to have created the atrocity, and it would only be logical for him to do everything within his power to put a stop to it. Dahmer was charged with 4 charges of first-degree murder on July 25, 1991. On August 22, 1991, he was charged with 11 further charges of first-degree murder in Wisconsin. Investigators discovered hundreds of bone fragments around the area where Dahmer admitted to killing his first victim, Stephen Hicks, and accused him of overt first-degree murder. Dahmer was not prosecuted for Edwards' attempted murder or the death of the accused man who went missing in 1987 and is suspected of having been murdered by Dahmer owing to a lack of evidence. On January 13, 1992, Dahmer pled guilty but insane to 15 charges of murder. I remember watching a documentary on Dr. Hannibal Lecter and being utterly shocked at how such a deranged, twisted individual could exist in real life. In that particular documentary, there was a segment about one of his famous victims, Jeffrey Dahmer, and I was surprised to hear that he wasn't caught until 2 years after he started his killing spree. Many people are under the impression that police figured out who he was, then they found human remains in his apartment, but that couldn't be further from what happened. After seeing just how shockingly simple it was for Jeffrey to evade capture for as long as he did, and reading up on exactly what led police to find him, I wondered if my perception of these crimes had been wrong all along. There's no one in history more chilling than serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. But without a tip from a man named Chris Scarver, he may have remained at large. Unlike most victims, Jeffrey Dahmer was well known in his community. People that knew him agreed that there was something off about him, but nobody could have imagined just how badly off he was. When police finally discovered what he had been doing and who he had killed, they were so shocked by what they found that it took a long time for them to be able to pinpoint him as a suspect. And even when they did figure out who did it and how some of them didn't believe it. I'd say it's pretty likely that we'd be reading about new murders committed by Jeffrey Dahmer today if someone hadn't decided to keep an eye on him back then. And if someone else hadn't decided to take action after learning more about what happened during those murders than anyone else ever has or ever will. So maybe we should all thank those 2 cops for keeping us safe. We should thank them for ensuring Dahmer is not getting out of prison again. I know Dahmer is a cold-blooded killer, but do you think he has his reasons for killing people? I mean, no sane person will wake up one morning and decide to take people's life. Do you think he's got a mental issue? Or maybe he's got anger issues? Perhaps it could be a trauma. What do you guys think? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel.